the city of Toronto. Condo prices have been going down month over month for the past few months, and they're continuing a slight decline. Rental numbers going up. The average one bedroom is renting for almost $2,600, up 14% year over year. Two bedrooms, they're at $3,300 downtown Toronto. That number is a lot closer to $4,000, and they're up 8.8% year over year. We're not building clearly enough houses for people to live in. Rental rates will likely keep pushing upwards going forward. When you're looking at rent versus buy, there might be a better opportunity right now in the market to purchase a condo over purchasing a house. The price to hold a condo is very much closer in line to where rental numbers are right now. Hey there, people. This is Josh, broker with Sage Real Estate and Garrison Collective. And the Toronto Real Estate Board just dropped their numbers from July 2023 earlier this week. So let's break those down. We are currently in August 2023, and the numbers from the previous month generally drop the first week of the month. So let's break those numbers down. So let's just go over the summary real quick, and then we're going to jump into my analysis and opinion later on. So sales were up 7.8%. New listings were also up 11.5%. Active listings were pretty much flat, 0.5%. And then the average days on market were also down. I skipped over price. Let's jump into the hot topic of the average price being up. Many of you who have watched the news or are online, on Twitter, on Instagram, on Threads, whatever, you have seen that average price in the Greater Toronto area was up 4.2%. Now, those numbers are year over year figures, right? So if we look at last year was when the interest rates first started rising. I mean, sort of significant increases to the interest rates. So the market reacted to that and prices tumbled in the late spring, early summer last year. So we are comparing numbers July 2023 to July 2022. So when we look at that, yes, numbers may be up over last year, but there's a couple of factors contributing to those prices being elevated. So the first thing we'll look at is that demand is quite high this year. So last year with the interest rate shock, it pushed a lot of buyers to the sidelines. A lot of people trying to get a hang of like where the market's at. Are rates going to come back down, or are we in this for the long haul? Clearly now buyers understand that we are in a higher interest rate environment. So anyone who was on the sidelines likely decided to come back in this year because they noticed that it's very unlikely that rates are going to drop anytime soon. So that's the first factor. The second factor is that there was a lot of people with pre-approvals, existing pre-approvals that needed to still purchase real estate. So 2 months ago, 3 months ago, people could walk into the bank, get pre-approved for a rate likely in the high fours. And once the Bank of Canada made their announcement that rates were going to go up in June, then anyone who had that pre-approval, likely there's an expiry date on that pre-approval. They have 60, 90, sometimes in some cases 120 days to use that rate. So buyers had to jump into the market if they wanted to use that slightly lower interest rate. But then there's a few under the radar factors that people maybe won't consider when you look at average price being elevated. So the first thing that I've kind of looked at was that there's fewer homes in the less expensive price segments that traded last month. So when we look at the numbers overall, right, in terms of sales numbers, detached houses were clearly the winner in terms of sheer quantity of homes sold, right? So detached houses in July, when we look at the total market, there was almost 2,400 detached houses that sold versus only 445 semi-detached houses, 874 townhouses, and then condos, while a big seller still only came in at about 1,500 homes sold, right? So detached houses were really driving sales last month. Detached houses are also the priciest house segment there is. So clearly we're going to see elevated prices if it's mostly detached houses selling. And kind of attached to that, with detached houses being sold, generally if you're in the market for a detached house and detached houses, which trade on average, when we look at the entire GTA, just over 1.4 million, you generally have to be a wealthier individual to purchase those homes. Now, just due to economics, generally wealthier individuals are less affected or less sensitive to the rate hikes, right? Generally, if you're a wealthy individual, perhaps you have a little bit extra savings, you have access to more capital, you could put perhaps more money down on the purchase of your home. So perhaps the interest rate increase will have less effect if you're not borrowing as much money. So those are a couple of the factors that were likely driving price up. Will that price continue to go up? That's what we're going to get into next. So the monthly statistics for 2023, we saw that in January, we started with an average price of about just over $1 million at $1,037,000. And then prices kind of started going up month over month. Now, there is some seasonality to this. Generally, in most years, we'll see that in the winter, prices are a little bit depressed, and that's generally just due to the fact that there's just not a lot of inventory in the winter. And then prices go up. We see quite clearly that has happened here, right? So prices have went up month over month over month. So from January to May, almost hit 1.2 million in May, and then we've been coming down from there. Now, if we look at what happened last year in the market, so the seasonality was kind of thrown out the window. The rates were going up, and then we saw a progressive decline in house prices. Now, it's only been a few months, or 2 months, since the Bank of Canada announced their rate increases, but I would bet some pretty solid money that we're likely going to see what happened last year. So if we zoom up here to 2022, we can see that prices dropped, and then they continued to drop through August, and they made a little bump in the fall, but not significant. They went up by about $10,000 and then kind of continued to stay stagnant all the way until March of this year. And I have a strong feeling that we're likely going to see the same thing. So we're very unlikely to see much price growth going forward. Perhaps year over year, we may still see some increases, but you always want to, with me and when I speak to my buyers and my sellers, when I'm speaking real estate, I like to also look at the month over month to kind of see where the trend is currently this year, and not necessarily always look to what happened last year, because there's certain things that could have affected the market last year that we don't have this year, but this year is looking very much like last year in terms of, so last year is a pretty good indicator of what we could potentially expect this year, barring any massive shifts and changes to the overall economic market. Now, one thing that I like to kind of break down sometimes with my clients is looking at how does the current environment affect my ability to purchase, and what do I see as potentially a good buy? Like, how, if someone really wants to get into the real estate market, frame it a different way, where do I see value currently? So I'll tell you right off the hop, if you're buying a detached house in this market right now, I don't think you're necessarily going to, I don't have a crystal ball. I don't think you're necessarily going to lose money, because we saw the top of the market back in 2022. We haven't recovered to those numbers. So if you're buying a detached house right now, your money's probably okay. But if you're looking for potential investment value where perhaps you can try and beat the market, I'm seeing some interesting value in the condo market, because the condo market, and we'll get into those numbers in a second when we look at the city of Toronto, condo prices have been going down month over month for the past few months, and they're continuing a slight decline. So with rental numbers going up, let's pull up the rents real quick right now. When we look at the city of Toronto, the average one bedroom is renting for almost $2,600, up 14% year over year, 1.3% month over month. So, prices are going up every month by about 1%. And then we look at two bedrooms, they're at $3,300, and that's an average for the GTA. So if you look downtown Toronto, that number is a lot closer to $4,000, and they're up 8.8% year over year. And with the rental rates going up, they are very unlikely to start dropping anytime soon due to external pressures, because of a lot of new residents we have in the country and so on and so forth, and just we've already been in a housing crisis. We're not building clearly enough houses for people to live in. Rental rates will likely keep pushing upwards going forward. I mean, we can get into that another day in terms of like how we can potentially solve that. But regardless of that, this is the position we're in. Rental rates likely going to keep going up. So when we look at opportunities in the market, so let's look at right now, we'll take the average price of a detached house. Let's say you put 20% down on that house. So we're going to use a mortgage calculator from our friends at Outline Financial. Shout out Outline, Samantha, Joanna, the best mortgage brokers in the business. This is not an ad. I'm not getting paid to say that. They're just great mortgage brokers. So when we look at the average price of a detached house was just over 1.4 million. So when we put in the mortgage amount with 20% down, you're at just over $1.1 million worth of mortgage, almost $1.15 million worth of mortgage. Current interest rates are about 5.8%. Monthly payments, 30-year amortization over a 5-year term. So your mortgage payment on a detached house right now is $6,600. And then you're going to be paying $315,000 in interest over that 5-year term. So when we look at that versus your average condo right now, so again, we're using the Outline Financial calculator. The average condo, the price was just over $700,000. So if you put 20% down, your mortgage amount, just under $600 at $588,000. Again, same interest rate, monthly payments, amortization, same term. Your mortgage payment comes in at about $3,400. So almost half of what it would cost to buy a detached house. And you're paying significantly less interest at $162,000 over that 5-year term. So when we compare those prices to the average rents, the price to hold a condo is very much closer in line to where rental numbers are right now. So in terms of like when you're looking at rent versus buy, and we didn't really pull up the house rental numbers, but anecdotally, and I mean based on my experience, most houses, if you're looking at renting a whole house, you're looking $5,000 a month in many cases to rent a house. So when we look at the spread at paying almost $7,000 versus renting a house at $5,000, it makes a hell of a lot more sense to rent a house right now than it does to buy a house based on the monthly payment and the amount of interest you're going to pay over a 5-year term. However, when we look at condos, the spread isn't as large, right? So there's a $300 difference in mortgage amount versus the average rental amount. And yes, there will be maintenance fees and property taxes that you're going to have to add to that. But the spread isn't quite as large. And with condo prices coming down a little bit, there might be a better opportunity right now in the market to purchase a condo over purchasing a house. Number one, you're not extending yourself financially. Number two, you're buying an asset that is probably near the bottom or at the bottom of its current price valuation. So you likely have potentially more room for growth moving forward. So just some food for thought right there. And you may be yelling at me that average price is likely due to a lot of 1-bedrooms being sold. Yes, there are a lot of 1-bedrooms that are reflected in that price, but there also are a lot of 2-bedrooms. And not only that, if you watch this channel, you know there's a lot of very under the radar neighborhoods where 2-bedroom condos are trending well below or right at the average in the city of Toronto. So you can very much beat that rental market by perhaps looking at a condo. So that's just my opinion. I think there's a ton of opportunity in the condo market. So if you're looking potentially to buy a condo right now, reach out to myself and my team. We'd be more than happy to help you find a condo. So I already alluded to the fact that we're going to touch on the Toronto numbers, and then my whole chat right now about house versus condo will probably come into a little bit more of a clearer picture. So let's look at the home price index for the city of Toronto, and this will kind of come in. The home price index is a smoothed out version of the stats that removes some of the top end and the low end of the sales and kind of looks at the more average property to create kind of a bit more of a more accurate price, to call it like a benchmark price for the market. So when we look at the benchmark for specifically the city of Toronto, so for all home types, we're only up 0.5%, so very much flat to last year. So while the average price In the non-smoothed out segment, we were up 4.2. And we looked at things when we smooth things out. So when we try to remove some of those factors I talked about earlier in this update, we're only at about 0.5% up over last year for all home types. Detached houses, leading the market, we're up 3.14%. Then we look at semis, up 0.75, so again, fairly flat. Townhouses were down, actually, 3.85% over last year. So interesting to keep an eye on townhouses. And then also condos were down 1.54% year over year. And there's some neighborhoods in here, when we zoom in right here, you'll look at some areas in Toronto, they're down almost 5%. In many actually fairly trendy areas, there's a couple spots where maybe the numbers are flat or up slightly, but condo prices are trending down. So what we just talked about, the house versus condo, right? You're buying a condo right now where prices are slightly depressed. There might be some really interesting opportunity in the condo market. That's it for today's market update. Keep an eye out. Next week, we're going to be dropping our Weston neighborhood tour video. And we're going to hope to have a home tour or two in the Weston neighborhood. So watch out for that. Keep an eye on the channel. And as always, we would love to be your real estate resource here in the city of Toronto. So if you're looking to buy, sell, rent, if you're a landlord that wants to rent out a place, hit us up. We'll be more than happy to help you out. Again, so this has been Josh from Sage Real Estate, Garrison Collective. Peace out.